All right, we are up to 43 attendees, so I think we have a good critical mass, and I'm going to get rolling. My name is Hannah Mitchell. I apologize for the weird lighting on my face, but hopefully you'll be mostly looking at the slides. We've got a bright, sunny evening. I am the program director for Solar United Neighbors of Texas, and I'm joined here by Vincent Yurkovich, and he will be fielding the Q&A that comes through in the chat. And we are so pleased that you have joined us. So a little bit of housekeeping. You can submit your questions in the chat and we'll do our best to answer them in the chat. We'll also have some time at the end for verbal Q&A. And you'll be able to raise your hand and elaborate on any questions that weren't answered. And the webinar is being recorded, so if you have to drop off a bit early, you'll be able to check out a recording on the landing page for the co-op. I also want to give a shout out to our partners, Plano Solar Advocates and Texas Interfaith Power and Light, who are joining us in spreading the word about this opportunity to go solar together as a group. And Plano Solar Advocates wanted to share that there is an upcoming Dallas-Fort Worth solar tour. So in the greater North Central Texas area, it's happening on October 1st, and there should be a link in the chat so you can check out more information about that. I believe Larry Howe with Plano Solar Advocates has joined us this evening, and I'm just going to see if Larry, if there's anything that you would like to add, Larry. And I'm going to let Larry either put something in the chat, or if he raises his hand, Vincent will unmute him. All right, so hearing nothing more about the Dallas-Fort Worth solar tour, if there are other things that need to be shared, we can also make time for that later. All right, so a little bit about Solar United Neighbors. We are a national 501c3 nonprofit organization. We are not affiliated with any company or product. We are vendor neutral. And we really rely upon our community of supporters and partners to become engaged and involved in the journey of going solar. We are a national nonprofit, and we have staff on the ground in about a dozen states. Texas is one of them. And our mission is to help people join together, go solar, and fight for their energy rights. And we really see this as a mutually reinforcing cycle. So we're going to talk tonight mostly about the go solar portion of our work, which is getting panels on top of roofs. And then we also work on organizing and advocacy efforts to make it easier for more people to go solar. Nationally, we've helped more than 6,500 families go solar, and that has resulted in an enormous amount of installed solar capacity and emissions reduction savings. In Texas, we have been running programs here since the very end of 2018, and we've run 13 co-ops and counting since then. A little bit of history about SUN. So we got started back in 2007 when our now executive director, Anya Schoolman, fielded a request from her son and his best friend, who were in middle school at the time. And they'd seen a documentary, and they came home from school and they were like, "Mom, we have to put solar on our roof." And so Anya was like, "Okay, I guess I'll check this out." And there wasn't a ton of public facing information about solar at the time. And it was confusing, and there were possible tax credits, and it was expensive too. And so she thought, okay, well, maybe if we can get a group of our neighbors together who want to learn about this process and go solar with us, we can use our aggregated buying power and shared learning experience to drive down the cost and the hassle of this. And so her son and his best friend went door to door in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood in Washington, D.C., and they got a group of homeowners who were all interested in investigating solar. And from that that first Mount Pleasant Solar Cooperative back in 2007, we have become a national nonprofit. Our theory of change is to help people go solar, join together, and fight for their energy rights. And we believe that the more educated and enthusiastic electricity consumers and solar owners that there are, the better that we can work together to improve policies that accelerate this deployment of solar and this change to renewable energy. I'm going to get into the bulk of the presentation, but I also wanted to touch on the equity component of our work. And so a lot of our current polluting energy infrastructure is located in lower income communities and communities of color. And one of the reasons that we choose rooftop solar as an intervention is to help put more money into the pockets of everyday people who are paying electricity bills, help deploy more solar jobs, and accelerate this transition of something that people can really say yes to instead of just no to. And so we're constantly looking for ways to make it easier for even more and more people to access solar. So what we're going to cover today is first solar technology, then I'm going to get into the solar economics piece, and then finally I'm going to go over how our co-ops work. So solar technology. For the purpose of our conversation this evening, we are talking about solar photovoltaic panels or solar PV. There is solar that is called solar thermal, that is for the heating of water. But all of our co-ops are focused on solar PV or solar photovoltaic, which is for the creation of electricity. This right here is a basic cross section of a solar panel or a solar module. And the basic components of this is an aluminum frame. You have silicon solar cells, and they're really built to be able to withstand being outside in a bunch of different conditions. And when these individual solar modules or solar panels are wired together, they become a solar array. The next system component I'm going to mention briefly is racking, and this is what is going to provide structure for the solar array. And a common racking scenario is going to be like is pictured here on an asphalt shingle roof, where you have racking that attaches directly to the rafters. This right here is a standing seam metal roof, and it uses C-clips to attach to the standing metal seams. And a different racking scenario, if you don't want solar on your roof or you don't have a suitable roof for solar and you have a lot of ground space, is a ground mounted scenario, which usually comes with adders associated with trenching and wiring. Another system component that you will see if you were to receive a proposal from a solar installer are inverters. And these are the parts of the system that are going to convert or invert your electricity into a type of electricity that is used in your home. And so there's three basic types of there's essentially three different categories of inverters. You have string inverters, you have micro inverters, and then you have string inverters with DC optimizers. And so a string inverter is a great solution if you have an uncomplicated roof situations. You don't have a lot of angles and you have minimal shading. And it's going to invert the electricity for a string of panels overall, whereas the microinverters are going to pop onto the back of a module and invert that electricity on a module by module basis. And then the string inverters with DC optimizers can kind of combine some of the best aspects of the string inverters and the microinverters. You don't need to know what type of inverter you really want, but we just wanted to give you a picture of what type of system components you might expect to see on a solar proposal from an installer. The next component I'm going to mention is the electrical panel. So output from your inverter is generally going to go into the bottom of your main electrical panel. And in general, many homes don't need an electrical system upgrade. If you have an older home, that is something that your installer may recommend. And those those full electrical system upgrades are an adder that would be added on to the cost of your system, and those can range anywhere from what I usually see is like the $1,000 to $2,500 range. The next part of important terminology that I'm going to go over are kilowatts and kilowatt hours. So your system is going to be measured in kilowatts. That's the unit of system size. It's essentially the rated capacity of a solar array, and it's a unit of power. Whereas kilowatt hours is how much electricity production your kilowatts of solar are going to produce. And you've probably seen kilowatt hours as a unit of energy on your utility bill. And an average system size, I would actually say our true average for Texas is around 8 kilowatts. I think our national average size is in the 6 to 7 kW range. And the size of your system overall is going to depend on a lot of different factors, like how much electricity you are consuming, how much of your electricity you want to offset, your solar goals, and your budget. So linking all of these important terminology together, you have the individual modules that form a solar array on your roof. You have the energy from the sun that is hitting that solar array, creating an electrical current. It's flowing off of the array in the form of DC or direct current electricity. It's going through the inverter, which is going to transform that electricity into alternating current or AC electricity, which is the type of electricity that is used by your home. It's flowing through your electrical panel, and then it is going to be used by any type of load or electricity demand you have in your home. Any excess generation is then going to flow out through your utility meter and onto the grid to be used by your neighbors. I'm going to pause here and just see if there are any questions about the system components that haven't been answered and get a quick sip of water. Vincent, are we good on questions?
Yep, no questions in the chat, but feel free to use the chat as Hannah is going through the presentation, because I'm here to answer questions.
Awesome.
We did just have a question about batteries.
Okay,
and I
so
think you're about to get to that.
Yeah, we'll be getting to a section on batteries in just a couple of slides, so absolutely. All right, so you're probably wondering if you have excess generation over the course of the day or a week or a month or a year that your home is not self-consuming and it's going out through your utility meter, it's going onto the grid. What does that mean for your utility bill, and how does that work? So I am going to introduce the concept of net metering. Net metering allows for, so by law, utilities have to allow for the bi-directional flow of electricity. However, how much that electricity is worth is decided by statewide law. And many states, I think it's 37 or 38 states, have net metering laws that say the excess generation that a solar owner puts out onto the grid needs to be credited on their bill at the same rate that they buy electricity from the grid. In Texas, we do not have a statewide net metering law. And we also have, as I'm sure all of you are well aware, an unbundled or deregulated electricity market. So I'd imagine most of y'all live in Encore service territory, or maybe some co-serve service territory, or another rural electric cooperative. I'm going to be focusing on the deregulated utility market, but I'm also happy to answer questions about other rural electric cooperatives. So within Texas, we don't have a statewide net metering bill, but we do have individual utilities that offer solar buyback plans. I will note that as of the very end of last year, all of the available buyback plans in Texas are going to credit the excess generation that you send out to the grid at a rate that is below what you're importing from the grid, or it will be at that same rate plus a transmission and distribution utility charge. So we have this slide here. The image on the slide is from a web page that we maintain with Texas Power Guide that shows all of the available rate plans. We're also working on an effort to try to aggregate demand from solar owners for electricity plans that better complement solar. So Vincent is going to drop 2 links to those 2 separate efforts. But the bottom line here is that there are options to earn credit for your excess generation. But in general, as of right now, the market is constantly changing. They are not true net metered plans. So you might be wondering, okay, that's a lot of information. What is my electricity bill going to look like? I have a sample bill here. This plan was selected in the fall of 2021, so it does not truly reflect the current rates that are in the market. But in general, this person has a charge for electricity. This is the rhythm energy charge. So a charge for electricity that they bought from the grid, and then a credit for the excess generation that they sent out to the grid. There isn't any documentation of the electricity that their system generated and the person self-consumed, so used at the time that that electricity was being generated. And that is fairly common for utilities. It's just showing sort of this net flow of electricity. And so this person's total charges for the month are $10.56. In general, I would imagine with the current market for rate plans, that might be a little bit higher for many folks with solar. If anyone tells you that when you get solar, you're going to have a $0 electricity bill, that is in general not true. All right, I'm going to move on to some considerations for what makes a roof good for solar. So in general, you want to think about orientation, shading, enough space. So orientation anywhere from due east to due west makes a roof good for solar. In general, we just want to avoid the north-facing orientations. You want to look for little or no shading. Some shading can be okay, but the more space you have that gets direct sunlight, the better. And then you want about 200 contiguous square feet of space to mount the panels. Vincent, do we have any questions about, I was just thinking, do we have any questions about electricity plans that I should answer now, or should I hold them for later?
Yeah, someone just asked, with the current, how do the current plans that offer buyback compare to plans that don't offer any sort of buyback? And I think that is pretty obvious, but you can speak to that.
Yeah, so compared to no net metering, okay, so the plans that offer a buyback rate are going to offer you credit for your excess generation that's worth a little bit less than what you are buying from the grid. So you're going to buy electricity at a higher rate and sell it at a discounted rate, or I guess get credit at a discounted rate on your bill. Whereas if you selected an electricity plan with no buyback, any excess generation that you send out to the grid, you get 0 credit for that excess generation. Sometimes the import rates are lower. And we do have a service, again, through our partner at Texas Power Guide. It's free, and Vincent should be able to drop a link to that in the chat as well. But it will compare your electricity consumption and generation patterns against all available retail electricity plans in the market at the time that the report is done, to help you sort of make a decision about what type of electricity plan would be best for you. But credit back to my account and now a cash out option. Oh, and yes, in general, I don't think we're currently seeing any plans that have a cash out option. The plans are subject to change on a monthly basis. So as of my current knowledge at this moment, no cash out option. All right, I'm going to move on to other system components that were interesting, and that is batteries. So batteries have been incredibly popular in Texas since the winter storm Uri. And I guess a common misconception that people have is, well, if I have solar, then if the grid goes down, I'll still have electricity. And unless you have a storage component, a battery backup, when the grid goes down, your solar system will also go down. And that's really a safety mechanism to protect any line workers that are repairing the grid. So if you experience frequent power outages and you want that peace of mind when the grid goes down, batteries are a great option. So you might want storage for these frequent power outages, or if you have critical loads in the house that need to maintain consistent access to electricity. As of today, storage is not something that folks should consider if their primary motivation is to save money overall, or improve their payback period, or get paid for the additional services that storage adds to grid flexibility. So those grid benefit services we think are in the near future, but they're not here now. So definitely an excellent option for people who want backup power, but not so great an option if you just want to improve your payback rate. And I'm going to go on to the next slide. We have a battery storage guide for homeowners that goes into all of the ins and outs of what it means to add storage to your solar system. And Vincent's going to drop that in the chat. And I apologize if anyone can hear my son in the background. I believe he is upset about either dinner or bedtime. I'm going on to the next slide. We have a situation to explain how you can use this battery backup power. So in general, many folks decide what types of circuits they're going to serve with the backup power. You are absolutely welcome to add storage to power all of the circuits in your home when the power goes out. But a lot of people opt to just power some really critical things. So say the refrigerator and the microwave, some lights, but they might not decide to power the full HVAC unit. All right, I'm going to go along to some FAQ. So these are some questions that frequently arise, and if you have other questions about the technology components that aren't covered here, we're also welcome those questions. So people frequently ask about, okay, so what are the warranties for a solar system? And they come typically with 3 different types of warranties. There are 2 that are issued through the manufacturer. So there is a product warranty, and that guarantees that the physical components are intact. There is also a power production guarantee that's issued by the manufacturer. And what we typically see is as at least an 80% power production guarantee, which means that by year 25, your system will be producing at least 80% of its nameplate value. So we'll degrade over time, but we'll maintain some efficiency. And then the third type of warranty we see are the labor and roof penetration warranties. And those are issued by the installer, and they can range really anywhere from 2 to 25 years based on what the installer is willing to offer. Homeowners insurance. So I think I actually already got some questions about homeowners insurance via email. But in general, we encourage folks to let their homeowners insurance know that they have added solar and incorporate it in the policy. Your homeowners insurance premiums should not go up by much. In some very rare anecdotal instances, we've heard of them decreasing slightly if that particular company has a commitment to sustainability. If your homeowner's insurance does increase by much, we just encourage that you shop around. Maintenance. A solar array is very, very low maintenance. So there aren't any moving parts. There's no combustion engine that has wear and tear. So it is a very low maintenance system. What we do hear of folks doing is occasionally spraying down the panels with a garden hose, or having a company come out to inspect it and do some light cleaning. Frequently, rain patterns take care of any dust or pollen buildup, but if we're in a drought situation, this is something that some folks like to have done. But in general, very low maintenance. How long do systems last? So as I mentioned earlier, many of those warranties are for a period of about 25 years. That does not mean that your system is going to stop producing electricity at year 25, but that in general, that's how long they're guaranteed to be producing electricity. HOAs are another common question that we get, and there is a property code that stipulates the rights of potential solar homeowners within HOAs to go solar. You do need to let your HOA know that you're going to install solar, but they cannot outright prevent you from installing a system or prevent your selection as to what part of your roof you're going to install it on if their preferred location would reduce the electricity output of your system by more than 10%. So if they're planning to install it on an east facing roof, and by switching, and the HOA really wants it on a west facing roof because it doesn't face the street or whatever, and it doesn't significantly contribute to an electricity production loss, then the HOA is within its bounds to do so. But if it does significantly reduce the efficiency of your system, then they can't ask you to do that. And the historic districts used to have a lot more permitting requirements. last year, Senate Bill I want to say it's 398, 298 or 398, the Solar Consumer Protection Act, really significantly cut down on the level of paperwork required. So there are now renewed protections for your ability to go solar in a historic district, and also renewed protections on your ability to go solar in a municipality, regardless of their preference as to the location of the panels. I'm going to pause there and see if there are other questions that haven't been answered in this FAQ. I know there's a lot of things that are being answered in the chat. Vincent, do you think there's anything that I should address verbally, or should I keep going?
Have you talked about hail damage?
I have not. Good. So the modules are tested by manufacturers to withstand an inch of hail falling at 55 miles per hour. So if you have, say, softball sized hail, you may have some damage on your panels, but in general, the modules are really designed to be able to withstand all types of weather, and are frequently installed in areas that are subject to extreme weather conditions, and in many instances are more durable than the asphalt shingles on your roof. All right. I'm going to keep going to the economics section in just a minute, unless there are other questions. All right. So going on to solar economics, the meat of the issue. So the cost of solar has dropped really dramatically, especially in the past 10 years. And a lot of that is really due to developments in the technology. So if we're going to break down the cost of solar, a lot of those savings that you're seeing over time are in the hard costs, in the system components, in the technology. The costs that have not come down are the soft costs associated with marketing, with getting customers that are interested and educated about solar, and the labor costs. And so where Sun can come in is by helping to drive down those soft costs by providing installers with an interested pool of homeowners who are all in the same geographic area who are interested in going solar. And then we can translate those savings into savings on the array itself. So that is the value add of the co-op. The other component of solar economics is the tax credit. So some good news is that the federal tax credit was just recently renewed last month, actually, to be 30%. And it's set at 30% for the next 10 years. And so this is really great news because it was supposed to step down to 22% next year, and it has been renewed at 30%. So this 30% tax credit also applies to systems that are placed in service this year. So for folks who were already planning to go solar and had signed a contract and thought that they were getting a 26% tax credit, it's essentially retroactive. So 30% tax credit from year 2022 to 2032, at which point they'll start stepping down, unless, of course, renewed at the federal level. And here is some example pricing. So these prices are, of course, subject to what the installer's pricing comes in at that the co-op selects. But on average, our Texas Solar Co-op pricing has been around $2.50 per watt. So if you take $2.50 and you multiply that by 4 kilowatts, so 4,000, you're going to get $10,000. You double that and you get $20,000. And that's not to say that you can only get a system size that's 4 kilowatts or 8 kilowatts or 12 kilowatts, but just to show you sort of a range, a range of options here. And then we are applying the 30% federal tax credit to that. And that, of course, comes back when you file your taxes, assuming that you have a tax appetite. And then that net cost, we modeled payback ranges here given to available retail electricity plans for earning bill credit. And so at the time of this modeling, we're looking at approximately a 10-year simple payback rate. And I guess the thing I will add is that if you are really looking to maximize this payback rate, it might not be in your best interest to offset 100% of your yearly electricity consumption. And I say that because the market is fluctuating all the time. And as of the current rates right now, which of course are subject to change, the electricity that you either the electricity that you self-consume is automatically worth more than the electricity that you send back to the grid and get credit on your utility bill. So the more you can use solar as essentially an efficiency mechanism and a self-consumption mechanism, and having less excess generation flow out onto the grid in general, that is what, when we've modeled, results in a faster payback rate. But if you really want to offset 100% of your electricity consumption for environmental reasons, absolutely go for it. And if you want to add more solar at a later time, you do have the ability to add on modules. All right, I'm going to go on to the next slide, which is, so that was a cash purchase example. This is a financed example. And so we modeled this with a couple of different loan examples. Most installers are going to offer installer-based financing through a national solar financial institution. And many people like that because it's essentially one-stop shopping. We also encourage folks to look into different financing options like a home equity line of credit or a local bank or a credit union. We do have a page on financing that Vincent's going to drop into the chat that has a bunch of different financing examples. We are financing neutral, so if you know of great local solar financing options that aren't listed, please do drop us a line, and we'll come to our email at the end, but we'll definitely add that to our resources. And then the things that folks generally want to consider, so there isn't one certain loan that's best for everyone, just like there isn't one offset size or one solar array size that's best for everyone. But some things to keep in mind is that if you want to essentially replace your electricity bill with a loan payment and push that loan payment out over, say, a long period of time, like 20 to 25 years, many people will opt for the installer-based financing, which usually comes with a much lower interest rate, but with a high dealer fee. Whereas if you would like to pay off your loan in a much shorter period of time, you're likely going to have a higher interest rate. But if you want, say, a 5 or a 10-year loan, you might want to look into, say, a credit union or a traditional bank loan. All right. Okay, I think I've basically covered all of this information. There are a bunch of different loan types, and we have a financing page that does a much deeper dive on all of those options. Solar United Neighbors is also a field of membership partner with the Clean Energy Credit Union. and Community First Credit Union. Those are two national credit unions that specialize in solar energy. And the one thing I would add there is that they've recently changed their terms of service. So anyone who's a co-op member can become a member of the Clean Energy Credit Union or Community First Credit Union, but they're only working with a select pool of installers. So it doesn't always line up so that the installer that co-op members select is also accredited through one of these credit unions. But we do have more information about those credit unions on our website. All right, I'm going to move along to how solar co-ops work. So why join a solar co-op? And the benefits of joining a solar co-op is that you can learn from other folks and Solar United neighbors and have this vendor neutral solar expertise to help you through each step of the process. And you can aggregate your purchasing power with other people who are interested in going solar with you. And this is a very basic timeline of how the solar co-op process works. So the initial phases of the co-op include launching it and learning about it, which y'all are doing right now. You can then sign up online. I think many people here are already members of the co-op, but if you are not and you're interested in joining, Vincent either has or will drop a link in the chat to the co-op sign up page. But you sign up and we grow the group. I will share that we are ahead of schedule with growing the group. So we are actually at the phase of issuing an RFP or request for proposals to solar installers. If there are any installers on the call, we have a page for installers and the RFP is also up on the website. So we encourage companies to bid on the group. Solar United Neighbors then compiles the bids and makes sure that the companies answer all of the questions in the bids and then puts them into a spreadsheet so that selection committee members, who are always made up of members of the co-op, want to volunteer their time, can make an apples to apples comparison. We then sit down with members of the selection committee and review the bids, and it is always up to members of the co-op, up to the selection committee to select the installer that they think will best serve the group. So it's never Sun that picks and chooses the installers. It's always really a member-driven process. And then we have a deadline to sign up for the group so that the installer will know approximately the number of people that they can expect to reach out to and offer proposals to. And every co-op member will have the opportunity to get an individual proposal from the solar installer at the group rate with the group's components. And it is then up to each individual co-op member to say, yes, this looks great, I want to move forward, or no, thank you, I've learned a lot about the process, but this really isn't for me. And so there's never any cost or commitment associated with joining the co-op, and the individual contracts, should you choose to sign one and move forward with a solar installation, are between the co-op member and the installer, not Sun. Once the installations have been done, we usually like to celebrate the success. So what's next? You can, again, join the Plano Solar Co-op, tell your friends and neighbors in Plano about the co-op. And if you have questions, you can drop a line to Texas team at solarunitedneighbors.org. I am going to stop sharing my screen and open it up to some additional questions that haven't been answered in the chat.
Yeah, so we had some good questions. So Jim asks, is joining the co-op free or is there a fee? It is free. Connor asks, will I be contacted by Sun or how? So once you join the group, we will send you some emails on a day-to-day basis for about the first week that are meant to be educational. We'll also be in touch regarding other important milestones, for example, the selection committee, when we'll ask everyone to participate. So then when the installer is selected, we will share the installer's contact information with all of the co-op members. And then Hannah, someone asked about the average battery cost. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think generally what we see is around $12,000 for one battery bank. And then occasionally they'll be at a discounted cost if you choose to add additional battery banks. But actually, Vincent, you've probably looked at a bid review spreadsheet more recently than me. So correct me if those numbers seem off.
Yeah, I would say, and to be honest, Hannah, I was watching the chat, so I didn't hear your exact answer, but I would say $10,000 to $15,000 is normal. But I think it's worth reminding everybody that once you start adding a battery, when you add a battery, you're really not doing